I had spent 3 weeks planning that dinner. The linens were ivory and gold. I'd custom ordered them from a little online boutique I'd found last fall. The menu was 5 courses each one with options for the kids, the picky eaters, the gluten-free cousin. I even called the restaurant twice to make sure they could accommodate a peanut allergy. I wanted it perfect. It was the first Christmas since Mom passed, and I knew everyone would be a little emotional. So I thought maybe if I could just create something beautiful, just one night of warmth of togetherness, they'd remember we were still a family. That was naive. I showed up early to the restaurant like I always do. I had a small photo of Mom framed and brought it with me, setting it next to the centerpiece. She used to love candlelight dinners, even when it was just the two of us, especially on Christmas. I wore red the exact shade she used to say looked best on me. One by one, I checked my phone. No calls, no texts, just silence. At 6:25, I started to get worried. Maybe there was traffic, maybe someone got lost, or maybe my cousin Jenna got one of her migraines again. By 6:40, I knew. I watched the hostess glance at me, then whisper to another staff member. I smiled politely, pretending I didn't notice. But then she walked over, hesitant, almost embarrassed. "Miss Claire," she said gently, I believe, I believe some of your guests might have made a last-minute change. I overheard someone mention that the Williamson group reserved a table at Venezia's. That's that's just a few blocks over." I stared at her. Venezia's. The little Italian place with the plastic flowers and $12 pasta bowls. They chose that over me. My breath tightened in my chest. I opened my phone again. Nothing. No missed calls. No messages saying, "Sorry, we changed our plans." No explanation. Just silence. I sat back down and stared at the untouched place settings. The polished forks, the name cards I'd handwritten last night. Every detail. Every little thing I did to make them feel loved. Ignored. It felt ridiculous. I felt ridiculous. Like a child left alone at a birthday party no one came to. I didn't cry, not right away. I just sat there, still, frozen, trying to make sense of it. Then came the sting, first in my chest, then behind my eyes. One tear slipped out before I could stop it, then another. I waved away the server who came with water. I told her, "Just give me a few minutes, please." And so I sat there alone, at a table for 14, while strangers around me laughed and toasted and passed plates of food. I could feel the pity in their glances. Or maybe I imagined it. I don't know. All I know is the table felt like a spotlight, a stage, and I was the star of a tragedy I never auditioned for. Eventually, I stood up, took one last look at the table, and walked out. The cold air hit me like a slap. I didn't even put my gloves on. I just walked, blocks and blocks. Past the holiday lights, the carolers, the families taking pictures under the fake snow. That's when my phone buzzed. Jaden, he was my nephew. 19. Kind of awkward, a little nerdy, but always kind. The only one who ever asked how I was doing after Mom died. The only one who never looked away when I talked about her. His message was simple, Claire. "Can you wait at home? I need to give you something." I paused in the snow. My fingers were numb. My heart even more so. I replied, "Okay." Back at home, I lit the fireplace and curled under the throw blanket Mom used to love. The red one with little white pine trees stitched into it. Jaden showed up 20 minutes later. He looked nervous. He held a small brown envelope in both hands like it was fragile. "This was supposed to be for later," he said. "But I think now is the right time." "What is it?" I asked. He didn't answer, just handed it to me and said, "She left it for you. My grandma. Your mom." Then he sat on the edge of the couch, eyes wide. I opened the envelope slowly. Inside was a single silver key and a letter with my name written in my mother's handwriting. Familiar, steady, brave. It read, "If you're reading this, then they've probably left you behind again. But you're not alone. There's something I never told you, and it's time you knew the truth." The key was old-fashioned silver and slightly tarnished. I turned it over in my hands, confused. A key to what? I asked, looking up at Jaden. He shifted uncomfortably on the couch. She said it was to her storage unit, one she never told anyone about. She made me promise not to tell the rest of the family. Only you. A storage unit. Jaden nodded. She gave me the envelope the last time I visited her in the hospital. Said if something happened to her, I had to wait for the right time. She told me I'd know. I didn't understand it then. But after tonight, after what they did to you, I knew. I sat in silence for a long moment, the key warming in my hand. My mother had secrets. The woman who organized her spice rack alphabetically and called me every Thursday at 7:00 p.m. sharp had secrets. Jaden reached into his jacket and pulled out a slip of paper. Here, the address. It's about 20 minutes from here. I can drive. No, I said, standing up. Let's go now. I want to see it. We drove in silence, snowflakes dancing across the windshield like whispers from the past. The storage facility sat just off a back road behind an old gas station. Quiet, unassuming, Unit 117. My hands trembled slightly as I slid the key into the lock. It clicked open easily, like it had been waiting for me. The door creaked as it rolled up. At first, it looked like any other storage unit: cardboard boxes, plastic bins, a few pieces of old furniture. But then I saw the filing cabinets. 4 of them, labeled, organized, locked. Jaden handed me a second key he'd pulled from the envelope. Inside the first drawer was a manila folder marked simply Claire. Read first. I pulled it out and opened it carefully. Inside was another letter. Claire, if you're reading this, you already know your family has failed you again. I am so sorry. I tried to hold them together, but I see now that I should have been preparing you instead of protecting them. You have always been the strongest, the kindest, the one who gave without asking anything in return. And they use that, over and over. What's in this unit belongs to you, not just physically, but emotionally, spiritually. It's the truth. The rest of the drawer was filled with documents, old property deeds, investment portfolios, photos. I pulled out one document near the front, a copy of a will, not the one that had been read to the family after Mom passed. This one was dated 3 years later, updated. It left everything to me. Everything. The house, the lake cabin, the trust fund. There was a handwritten note attached to the page. I changed the will when I saw what they were doing. How they treated you like help instead of family. I didn't have the strength to confront them, but I had the sense to protect you. My knees buckled. I sat down on an overturned storage bin, my breath shallow. They told me Mom's assets had gone to a trust to support the entire family, that we'd all be equal beneficiaries. But that wasn't the truth, not even close. Jaden hovered nearby, unsure whether to speak. Are you okay? I shook my head. No, but I will be. In the second drawer, I found more documents. Emails, printed text messages, screenshots, evidence. Jenna, my cousin, had been siphoning money from the family account. Her husband had defaulted on a private loan from my mother, something no one had ever told me. My brother had tried to coerce my mom into changing power of attorney 6 months before her death, citing my mental instability after my divorce. They'd been circling her like vultures for years, but she'd seen it. She'd documented everything, and she'd left it all to me, not out of favoritism, out of trust. She knew I'd do the right thing, that I wouldn't let them twist it all around like they always did. Jaden sat beside me. She told me once, you were the only one who ever listened to her, like really listened. When she talked about Grandpa, about her fears, about feeling invisible after she retired, you didn't try to fix it. You just sat with her. I wiped my eyes. I had no words, just a sense of awakening, like someone had turned on a light in a room I'd lived in my whole life but never seen clearly. Everything was different now. The will, the money, the house, the truth, but even more than that, the story. The version of my mother the family believed that she was frail, confused, dependent, it wasn't real. She had been strong, strategic, she hadn't left me alone, she'd left me armed. The next morning, I didn't answer the group chat when my cousin Jenna sent a photo of the family playing board games captioned, Such a cozy Christmas, as if nothing had happened, as if I hadn't been left behind like an afterthought. Instead, I sat at the kitchen table in my small apartment, sipping lukewarm coffee and staring at the manila folder. The original will sat in front of me like a quiet rebellion, daring me to confront the people I once called family. And I wasn't ready. Not yet. But I wasn't going to ignore it either. I made a copy of the document, carefully placed the original back in its protective sleeve, and tucked it away with the other files from the storage unit. I opened my laptop and started reading legal blogs, estate law FAQs. I even watched 2 YouTube videos from attorneys about contesting wills and fraud. My hand still shook when I clicked the email icon. I started typing. Subject urgent. Estate clarification needed to Mackenzie and Gold Law Group. Dear Mr. Gold, I hope this finds you well. I'm contacting you regarding the estate of Lillian Moore, my mother. I have recently come into possession of a revised will signed and notarized after the version previously presented at probate. I believe this new document may render the current family trust invalid. Please advise on the next steps. I am available for a call anytime tomorrow. Sincerely, Claire Moore. I hovered over the send button for a full minute before finally clicking it. It felt like lighting a match in a room full of gas. That night, Jaden texted me a photo of the rest of the family sitting around the Christmas tree. He didn't say anything, but the image spoke volumes. My brother holding a champagne flute, my sister-in-law grinning, Jenna front and center as usual. None of them had called, none had texted. They'd gone on celebrating without me. And in the pit of my stomach, something began to shift. Not sadness, not betrayal, resolve. The following morning, Mr. Gold called. Claire, he said, his voice warm but cautious. I've reviewed the documents you sent. I need to tell you that what you've uncovered is not only valid, it's binding. Your mother's updated will overrides the family trust. I swallowed hard. Even though they already distributed the estate, especially because of that, he said. If the distribution was made in bad faith, meaning certain parties knowingly withheld or ignored the updated will, it could constitute fraud, possibly even criminal fraud, depending on the circumstances. I was quiet for a long moment. What do I do next? You have 2 choices, he said gently. We can move forward with formal litigation, which will likely get messy, very public, and destroy whatever relationship remains with your relatives. Or you can call a meeting, present the documents, give them the opportunity to rectify the situation privately. If they agree to honor the revised will and return the assets, we can avoid court entirely. I sighed. And if they refuse, then we file. That night, I sent a single message to the family group chat. I need to speak with everyone. It's important. Can we meet at Mom's house tomorrow evening at 7? 3 dots appeared almost instantly, then vanished. Silence. Then finally, a reply from Jenna. Is this about Christmas? You're being really dramatic, Claire. I replied simply, no. It's about Mom's will and what she really wanted. Then I turned off my phone. The next day felt like standing on the edge of a cliff with my feet half off the ledge. My stomach churned as I pulled into the driveway of my childhood home. The house I'd helped repaint after Dad passed. The one I'd vacuumed before every holiday, even when I was just a guest by then. They were all already there when I walked in. Jenna on the couch, legs crossed, arms folded like she was at a performance. My brother Nate stood by the fireplace, trying to look casual. His wife Danielle had brought her laptop for some reason. My Aunt Carol was there too, looking tired, as if she'd aged 5 years since the funeral. Only Jaden stood when I entered. Claire Jenna said, her voice as sweet and poisonous as ever. This seems a little intense, don't you think? Bringing us all here over an envelope? I didn't answer. I pulled the folder from my bag and laid it on the coffee table. Mom had a second will, I said calmly. Updated 3 years ago. It names me as sole beneficiary. Jenna let out a short laugh. That's cute. You made a fake will. It's real, signed, notarized, with documentation to back up everything, including proof that you, I looked at her, were funneling money from the trust to your personal accounts, and that you, Nate, tried to get power of attorney when Mom was sick without telling me. Silence. Claire. Nate started raising his hands. Let's talk this through. No need to get lawyers involved. I already did. I pulled out a card. This is David Gold, estate lawyer. He'll be reaching out if we can't resolve this privately. Danielle closed her laptop slowly. I'm offering you a choice, I said, voice steady. Either we follow the revised will, which means returning all assets dividing nothing, or I take it to court. Everything becomes public, and legal action follows. Jenna's face drained of color. You can't be serious, she hissed. I'm dead serious. She stood. After everything we've done for you, what you've done is steal from me, from Mom. And I'm done pretending it's fine. Nate stepped forward. Claire, please. You have until tomorrow at noon to decide. After that, my lawyer files. I picked up the folder, turned, and walked out the door, shaking but upright. Behind me, the silence finally shattered. I didn't sleep that night. I paced my apartment floor in silence, watching the city lights flicker through my living room window. A part of me still couldn't believe what I had done. I had drawn a line in the sand, given them a deadline, forced them to face a truth they'd spent years avoiding. At 11:59 the next morning, my phone buzzed. A single message from Nate. We'll talk. 2 p.m. today. Please come to the house. I arrived early, parked a few houses down, and just sat there. This was the house where I'd spent 35 Christmases, 20 birthdays, every Thanksgiving. It was where Mom taught me to cook, where I had my first kiss on the porch, where we grieved my father together. Now it was the battlefield. As I stepped inside, the air felt dense. The heat was on, but the chill of avoidance hung in the air. They were all in the dining room, seated just like a family dinner, but no warmth, no laughter, just guarded faces and tight lips. Nate was the first to speak. Claire. We reviewed the documents. They're legitimate. I waited. He swallowed. We didn't know. About the revised will. That's not true, I said firmly. Jenna did. All eyes turned to her. I found the email, Jenna, I said, pulling out my phone. You replied to the notary's confirmation. You knew Mom updated the will and you buried it. Her mouth opened slightly, but no words came out. I turned to Nate. And you tried to get power of attorney after her second hospitalization. You told the doctors I was out of town. I wasn't. I was here. He didn't deny it. I wanted to make sure she had help managing things, he said. But maybe I went about it the wrong way. Aunt Carol finally spoke. Claire, what do you want from us? I took a deep breath. I want you to honor Mom's final wishes. The house, the accounts, the paintings, the jewelry. They all come to me per her instructions, not to the family trust, not split 5 ways. I'm not fighting over scraps anymore. And I'm not pretending I'm okay being forgotten. You're serious, Jenna whispered, voice trembling. I've never been more serious. That afternoon, I sat with Mr. Gold and signed the documents to dissolve the family trust and transfer assets into my name. It was done, quietly, legally, and completely. Jenna didn't show up for the final paperwork. Nate did. He shook my hand, awkward, distant, but sincere. As we stood outside the law office, he said, I don't know if I agree with all of this, Claire, but I see now. Mom really did intend for you to have everything. And I'm sorry. I nodded. I'm not angry anymore, Nate, but I'm also not going to forget. He sighed. You were always the better one. Mom knew that. I just wish we hadn't figured it out this way. I returned to Mom's house that evening, this time not as a guest, as its rightful owner. The front door still squeaked when I opened it. The light in the hallway flickered like it always did, but somehow it all felt different. Mine. I moved from room to room, slowly touching the walls, the photo frames, the memories. In the upstairs closet, I found the old Christmas boxes, decorations we hadn't touched in years. On instinct, I pulled them out, opened one, and there it was, a faded paper ornament I made in the 2nd grade. Mom had saved it all this time. I sat on the floor and cried, not because I was sad, but because for the first time in my adult life, I had stood up for myself and won. The twist came a week later. I was sitting in the dining room going through old mail when I noticed a thick manila envelope buried at the bottom of a drawer. My name was written across the front in my mother's handwriting. I opened it with trembling hands. Inside were 2 letters and a key. The first letter was dated 3 months before her death. My dearest Claire, if you are reading this, it means you found the revised will. I'm sorry I didn't tell you directly, but I knew if I tried, someone would stop me. You've always been the heart of this family, even when they failed to see it. You were the one who took me to appointments, helped with my meds, sat beside me when I was scared. Not because you wanted something, but because you loved me. I saw how they treated you, how they excluded you, and it broke my heart. That's why I changed the will. This house, these things, they belong to you. You earned them with every sacrifice. The key is for the safety deposit box at Crest Bank downtown. Go there. You'll understand everything. With love, always Mom. The second letter was from the bank confirming access to the box under my name. The next morning, I went to the bank, hands shaking, heart pounding. Inside the deposit box were 2 things, a small velvet pouch and another envelope. Inside the pouch, Mom's wedding ring, the one she hadn't worn since Dad passed. She told me it would go to the person she trusted most. Inside the envelope, life insurance paperwork. She had made me sole beneficiary. Another $100,000 in a separate policy no one else knew about. I sat in the vault stunned. Mom hadn't just left me a house or a bank account. She left me dignity, recognition, a final undeniable reminder that I mattered to her. And with that, the past no longer felt like an open wound. It felt like a closed chapter. I didn't rush to tell the rest of the family about the safety deposit box or the life insurance. Some truths are better left private, especially when the people involved only see value in what they can divide. Instead, I focused on restoring the house. Not flipping it, not gutting it, restoring it. Mom had loved this place, and so did I. It deserved more than paint and new floors. It deserved memory. I hired a contractor to fix the roof and touch up the exterior. I had the old banister polish the one Dad built with his own hands in the early 80s. I even replanted the hydrangeas by the front porch, Mom's favorite. For weeks, I worked from dawn to dusk, cleaning out drawers, boxing up items, pausing every so often when I stumbled on a photo or a note that made me sit down and breathe through the ache. And through it all, I found a strange peace. I had no one to prove anything to anymore. No more chasing validation. No more being the reliable one, while others reap the reward. No more being the backup daughter. I was simply Claire, 38, capable, independent, and free. Around mid-February, Nate dropped by unannounced. I opened the door cautiously. He held up a peace offering Mom's blueberry cobbler recipe typed out and laminated. She gave this to me before she passed, he said. Said I was hopeless in the kitchen without instructions. I thought maybe you should have it instead. I stepped aside and let him in. We sat in the kitchen silent for a moment, the same table where we'd eaten thousands of meals together. It still had the same dent from when I dropped a cast iron pot during Thanksgiving in 2003. I didn't know she changed the will, Nate said softly. I believed Jenna. I thought maybe you twisted Mom's intentions, and I didn't want to fight. But then I remembered how Mom always asked for you when things got tough, how you were the only one she trusted with her medication, her passwords, her fears. I didn't expect you to believe me, I said, but thank you for saying that now. He looked around the room. You've done a beautiful job with the place. She would have wanted it to stay a home, I replied. After a moment, he slid a small envelope across the table. Inside was a photo. Me and Mom, Christmas 2019. I was carving the ham. She was looking at me, not the camera. The look in her eyes said everything. Love, pride, trust. I found that in her wallet, Nate said. She must have kept it with her all the time. My throat tightened. I blinked hard and slipped the photo into my pocket. We didn't talk much after that, just sat there sipping tea, letting the ghosts of the past pass through and out the front door. Spring arrived early that year. By March, the trees were blooming and the scent of lilacs followed me every time I opened the windows. I started taking walks in the neighborhood again, letting the familiar sidewalks carry me toward healing. At the corner bookstore, the owner, Mrs. Collins, recognized me. Haven't seen you in a while, she said. Your mother used to bring you here every Saturday. She'd bribe me with hot cocoa and one Nancy Drew. Mrs. Collins laughed. She was a smart one. And kind. I hope you inherited both. I smiled. I hope so too. Later that week, I joined a community writing group at the local library. Small crowd. Mostly women in their 40s, 50s, a few retirees. People who had lived enough to know stories aren't always clean or convenient, but they matter. I started writing about family, not memoir, not revenge, just truth. I wrote about what it means to be the invisible daughter, the one who shows up, stays quiet, does the work, and watches others take credit. I wrote about grief and anger, and learning to reclaim your place at a table that once pushed you away. And the women listened, really listened. For the first time in years, I felt seen, not as a niece, not as a disappointment, but as a woman, a writer, a survivor. On what would have been Mom's 72nd birthday, I invited the writing group to the house. We had tea and cake on the patio. I wore Mom's scarf, the silk one with the floral print she only wore for birthdays and garden parties. We lit a single candle and passed around stories about the women who raised us. One woman cried when she spoke about her grandmother's resilience. Another laughed about how her aunt hid savings in cereal boxes. When it was my turn, I told them how my mother once spent an entire week helping me build a science fair volcano that never erupted. But she stayed with me the whole night anyway, I said. We sat in the gym eating vending machine candy, and she told me it wasn't about the volcano. It was about the trying. The group applauded gently, some eyes misty. That night after everyone left, I stood at the window overlooking the garden. I didn't feel alone. I felt surrounded by love, by memory, by strength. I didn't know I had until everything else was taken away. I whispered softly, "Happy birthday, Mom." I kept the promise. I stayed strong. It was midsummer when I finally visited the cemetery again. The sun was high, the breeze gentle, and the grass over Mom's plot had grown thick and green. I brought fresh lilies, her favorite. She used to say they reminded her of simplicity, that not all beauty needed to be loud. I stood quietly for a moment, then knelt beside the headstone. "I thought I was going to lose everything, Mom," I whispered. "But it turns out I was only ever carrying what wasn't mine to begin with." There was a peace in saying that out loud. Because the truth is, when everything happened, when Jenna and the others turned their backs on me, I thought maybe they were right. Maybe I was selfish. Maybe I didn't deserve to be in the will. Maybe I'd imagined the love between us. But it wasn't true. That envelope Nate gave me proved what I couldn't say with words. That Mom saw me. That I mattered. She didn't leave the house to me out of obligation. She left it to me because she trusted me. Because I was hers and she was mine. Later that week, I found an old voicemail I'd saved on a whim, dated 3 years back, a day before Mom's last surgery. "Hi, honey, just checking in. I know you said you'd be by after work, but don't rush. I'm fine, just tired. I was thinking about that time we burnt the turkey on Thanksgiving and had to eat cereal. Do you remember how we laughed so hard we cried? I love you, Claire. Always." I listened to it twice, then saved it again. Not out of grief this time, but out of gratitude. Because no matter what the others said, no matter how they twisted things, I still had the one thing they could never take, the truth. One evening while I was cleaning the attic, I came across an old cedar box. Inside there were Polaroids from the 80s, my parents newly married, smiling with the kind of joy that only comes from not knowing what's ahead. There was a bundle of letters, too, all addressed to me, never mailed. I sat cross-legged on the floor dust floating in the sunlight and read every word. Mom wrote about everything: my first dance recital, my scraped knees, my awkward teenage silence. She wrote about the fears she had when Dad died, about feeling like she'd failed me when she had to work double shifts, about how proud she was when I got my first job, even though she never said it at the time. And she wrote one sentence I'll never forget. "You don't need to become extraordinary to be worthy. You just need to be honest, kind, and brave. That's always been enough for me." I cried. Big, silent tears. Not because I was sad, but because I finally believed it. A few days later, Nate invited me to lunch. We sat at a small cafe downtown, not far from where we used to get ice cream as kids. He looked tired, but lighter. Jenna's trying to contest the will, he said, stirring his tea. I told her not to bother, that Mom made her decision with a clear head. I nodded. She'll blame me until the day she dies. Probably, he said. But that's not your burden anymore. He hesitated, then added, I think I finally see what Mom saw. You always showed up, even when it hurt. We didn't need to say more. It wasn't a full reconciliation, but it was a start. And sometimes a start is enough. That night I took a long walk around the neighborhood. Kids were playing in sprinklers. A couple was arguing gently on their porch about whether to grill burgers or order pizza. It was all so wonderfully normal. When I got home, I sat on the front steps with a glass of wine and looked at the house. Not as an inheritance, not as a trophy, but as a living memory, a place filled with stories. Some painful, most precious, and mine, finally mine. Looking back now, I think the most dangerous kind of heartbreak is the one that comes dressed as family. Because when strangers hurt you, you can build distance, you can rationalize. But when it's the people you've loved forgiven and made excuses for your whole life, the wound isn't just deep. It feels like betrayal from inside your own chest. What I learned is this. Sometimes people don't turn against you because you've changed. Sometimes they turn because you stayed the same, and that threatens the story they've built to justify their own behavior. When my sister and the others sat down at a fancy restaurant that Christmas night, laughing and sipping wine while I sat alone at a table built with care and hope, they weren't just being cruel. They were making a statement. You don't belong here anymore. And for a long time, I believed them. But here's the truth. Being left out doesn't mean you're wrong. Being lied about doesn't mean you're dishonest. Being unloved by them doesn't mean you're unlovable. I spent years trying to earn a place in a family that had quietly decided I was disposable. I walked on eggshells, stayed quiet, made myself smaller. And the irony is, when you make yourself small, it only makes people see you as even less. It wasn't until I stopped shrinking that I saw things clearly. Mom wasn't perfect. None of us are. But she saw me. Not the me that others criticize for being too quiet, too emotional, too cautious. She saw the me who stayed, who called every night when she was sick, who made it to every doctor appointment, who held her hand during the worst moments without ever asking for praise, the kind of loyalty that doesn't make headlines, but stays. And that kind of love, it's quiet, but it's real. Here's what I've come to believe. You don't have to prove your worth to people who are committed to misunderstanding you. Your dignity doesn't live in their approval. It lives in how you show up for others, how you show up for yourself. And sometimes the most powerful thing you can do is walk away not with anger but with clarity, not to punish them, but to protect yourself. Because peace doesn't come from being accepted by people who don't respect you. Peace comes from knowing you acted with integrity even when they didn't. I used to think that healing would feel like justice, that one day they'd apologize, admit their cruelty, and things would go back to normal. But healing, real healing, feels quieter than that. It feels like making coffee in your kitchen and realizing your hands aren't shaking anymore. It feels like laughing out loud and realizing you didn't look over your shoulder to see who was judging you. It feels like standing in front of a mirror and not hearing their voice in your head. It feels like freedom. If someone listening to this has ever been through something similar, if your family made you feel like you were hard to love or easy to forget, I want you to hear this. You are not the problem. And even if they never say sorry, even if they never acknowledge what they did, you can still heal. You can still move forward. You can still choose love without allowing manipulation. I thought that Christmas night would be the loneliest moment of my life, but now I see it as the beginning of a different kind of love story. One where I chose myself, where I stopped chasing people who only loved me when I was useful, where I started asking not, will they love me, but do I love myself when I'm around them, where I stopped surviving and started living. My mother once said, The people who deserve your loyalty never make you earn it by suffering. I didn't understand it then, but I do now. So if you're sitting alone waiting for someone to come around, let me be the voice that says maybe they won't. Maybe they never will. But maybe that's not the tragedy you think it is. Maybe that's the start of something new, something better, something braver, because you get to choose what happens next. And maybe, just maybe, what comes next is more beautiful than anything you ever thought you lost.